within one day, there was a huge shift in the wait time of the customers.
That is Marni Fechter. For over 5 years, Marni organized Go and See events for McKinsey, in which McKinsey clients or prospective clients would take a field trip to visit other McKinsey clients that had gone through some kind of transformation project with McKinsey's help. On this episode, Marni shares her suggestions on what it takes to run a successful Go and See and the benefits to the past client, the potential clients, and the consultant who organizes the event. After this episode, perhaps you'll consider connecting 2 or more of your own clients with one another. And if you'd like Marni's help with organizing a Go and See, she is now an independent professional, and her contact link is in the show notes. Hello, Marni. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks. I'm really happy to join and excited to speak with you.
So, Marni, we are going to talk today about Go and Sees, and I was really fascinated to hear about your work. You've been organizing Go and Sees for a number of years. Start us off. What is a Go and See?
So basically, a Go and See is taking people to actually go and see something. And that could be a client going to see the work that you've done or an organization has done with a specific company to learn from their best practices. You can take funders who are funding a program in, let's say, the developing world to go and see what they're developing. You could take people within an organization to go and see an area of an organization that has been through a transformation that you're planning to bring to that business group. So it's basically experiential learning and getting people away from a conference room and a bunch of PowerPoint slides and to actually get their hands dirty a little bit and talk to people at all levels of an organization and learn about the transformational work that has brought them to the success that they're seeing at the moment that you can learn from.
So I can see a few reasons to do this. One, for bringing funders to go see the work that a nonprofit is doing, will be to make the funders happy that their work is that their money is being well spent. And I can imagine a situation where a consultant would take some prospective clients to go see the work that's being done or has been done by that same consultant, in the past, right? To sort of validate it, like a massive in-person reference check. Talk to me about, are those the main reasons? Are there any other reasons of doing this?
Yeah, I mean, those are the 2 biggest reasons. For people to learn, to support client development, and to reinforce philanthropy, I would say would be the big 3 reasons to participate in a Go and See. And when I was at McKinsey and Company, what I basically did was run the Go and See programs, which were global, and we would take prospective clients or perhaps clients that we wanted to do more work with to go and see another client where we had successfully transformed a company. So, and people would hear from members of the teams that were touched by the transformation and learn from them about not only what worked, but what didn't work, because we don't want to pretend that transformation is easy and everything, goes perfectly, because then you're setting up a false expectation from your client who's going to see something. So you really want to have an open kimono type philosophy and show all the ugly as well as the good, so people can really understand that changing a company is hard. And then they could learn from others' mistakes as well. And it was a great client development tool. You get on a plane with your client, you sit next to them, and you chat with them. You spend a day, I would do programs that would be 1-day-long programs all the way up to week-long programs, which would be a deeper dive into a company. Or sometimes, we would have 2 companies within the week that we would visit. And it really gave an opportunity for clients and consultants to have a shared learning experience, as well as for them to showcase the good work that they've done at other organizations if they were wanting to, sell or market to this particular client. So I would recommend bringing key decision makers with you when you go on a go and see, and maybe their direct report so they could get excited about what is going to be happening with the work you do.
So when we met and spoke a few weeks ago, this seemed to me such an interesting idea. I've never done this myself, but the idea of bringing prospective client or a current client and to introducing them to another where you've done the work to help both teach them and show them in person seems like something that independent professionals could really use. Talk to me a little bit about let's kind of go through the process. First, let's talk about how do you choose a really good showcase client that you're going to go to see? Like how do you what's your selection criteria? How do you make sure that that's going to be a good place to go and visit?
So obviously you want to have a place where there's been, process improvements, cost savings, but you really want to take people to go and see somewhere where the culture has changed as well, because I think it's really easy to get that low-hanging fruit where you go in and you tweak a process here and there, streamline things, and people know that can be done. But long-term change is hard, and it involves changing the culture and creating an environment of continuous improvement. So when you find places where you have that kind of energy and excitement, it's contagious. So when you take people to go see something, not only do you want them to see something that's, okay, yeah, we saved all this money, but that people are excited about it and they love coming to work and they feel like the improvements have improved their lives as well, because you want them to talk to people. If you just want, the CFO to show a bunch of slides, you don't have to bring someone to go see the organization. You could invite the CEO to sit down and have dinner with the prospective client. So you want to take people somewhere where there's a great amount of enthusiasm for the changes that have undergone, and that people are willing to talk about them and celebrate their successes. This also not only seems to have an impact on the prospective client, but what I've noticed is when hosts allow another group to come and visit, it renews energy and excitement amongst the staff because they reflect on how they used to work and what's changed, and they get reinvigorated as well. So there's a positive impact for, hosting. And, there's ways to make the host excited to let people come, because it does give them a chance to celebrate their teams and their success. But it also can help with re-engaging with that client. You can go and visit, and then you can send them a lovely email or a report saying like what you saw and what's great. And you can also say, here are some opportunities that I noticed. And that can re-spark an engagement with the client that hosted. So it's a really wonderful business development opportunity, not only for the people that you're bringing to see, but for the hosts themselves to re-engage with you.
That's an interesting point that, the benefits to the host organization. So any listeners who are, clients and have done great work, kind of flip it and reach out to the consultant that worked with you and say, hey, let's do a visit here. If you were trying to, remind all of the team about the transformation that you did and get people excited, it's kind of a neat idea to invite guests in.
Right. And not only do you get the perspective of the consultant that worked with you, but you get the perspective of the executives who are coming to visit who all have, 20, 30 years experience, and they can provide you with feedback. So it's sort of like getting a whole bunch of people coming in and consulting for free, just for walking through and sharing what they're observing.
So paint me a picture of what a one-day visit would be like. Sanitize it, obviously, but maybe you can sanitize an actual go and see that you've done. Describe for me the facility, and do we sit in a team room all day long? Are we touring a factory or a mine or a lab? Like, you kind of give us a visual tour here, as if we were on one of these.
All of the above. I have done go and sees at banks, at insurance companies, at pharmaceutical companies, at manufacturing companies, in mines. So it really works in each industry. And what I would recommend is having a space that would be a conference room that would sort of be home base for the day. Serving breakfast, because people like breakfast and particularly like coffee. And then having an introduction that's not given by the consultant, but that's given by the head of the transformation program or the head of the business line, or, depending on the size of the organization, if the CEO is actually on site and available, or the president, they can, come in and welcome everyone and give a general overview of what the from state and what the to state has been, and to think through, even what the future goals are, where you're going on your journey of transformation. And then, once you have your overview, you can start doing a walkthrough. If it's a lean transformation, you can have the group that's visiting go and actually attend huddles and process confirmations. If it's a digital transformation, there's often a digital lab that's fun to walk through. But make things interactive so that people can actually see visual management or see how something has transformed. Give them a clear understanding of how the work used to happen. So I would recommend having, like plenary sessions broken up with walkthroughs, and also have panel discussions where you can have, frontline workers have a panel discussion to share their experience, middle managers, senior managers, and really make the day conversational rather than, just someone speaking to a bunch of slides. Obviously, you want to have a few slides to show the business success, like what the problem was, what was solved, what costs were saved, how much productivity increased, all that kind of stuff that people, they want numbers. But it's more about understanding how the people and the culture were impacted by the work that was done within the organization. Because I think that's what lasts. I think we've all heard the numbers about how many transformations don't stick, and that we all need to do work in transforming the culture. So that's why I would advise, if you have a client where the culture has changed, where people are excited, you want to take people to go and see that. And that doesn't mean that you can't take people to go and see a place where, the process was improved if you have a really interesting story. But you want to make sure it is interesting and makes it worth the trip for someone to, get on a plane or take a train or even drive to go and see something, because they're taking a day out of their regular business life to go and visit another organization.
Tell me about an example of an insight that one of the visitors had to illustrate the power of a go and see.
Well, we took a group to visit an airplane manufacturing company. And while we were there, we had a panel discussion with the front line. And there was a man on the front line who had been with the company for 28 years when the lean transformation started. And he was planning to retire at 30 years with a full pension and everything. And he was explaining he's now been there for 32 years because he loves coming to work and it's so interesting and exciting and everybody contributes their ideas and problem solves, and it's completely changed the way he works, and he loves his job now, which had gotten very stale. And somebody in our group that was visiting asked, what was a good question? Because the company gave $50 awards to people who had problem solved. So if you solved a problem, you got $50. And she said, look, the company I work at would never give a cash incentive. Do you think you would problem solve and your teams would problem solve if they weren't getting this money? And he said, oh, none of us keep the money. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, oh, well, we had a team member who had MS and doesn't work here anymore. So everybody on the front line agreed that we would donate whatever money we get for raising problems to MS research in this person's name. And the vice president of the company was moderating the panel. And he said, you do what? And he said, yeah, none of us keep it. We give it to the MS Foundation. And the vice president had no idea and said, well, let's talk after the panel because, we have a matching program for donations at the organization. So it was really interesting because it demonstrated that the culture was such that, people cared about their colleagues and they were interested in problem solving for the sake of problem solving, not because they were getting this money. And it was also really nice because I'm a softie. So that was like one of those moments where I was getting a little choked up at work. So people, really learn a lot. There have been instances where, I was at a call center and a frontline worker was explaining that they had it was a car insurance company and they had a new product rollout and there was a problem where the phones were backed up and people were waiting almost 20 minutes for calls. And he had noticed that the script for the new product had a lot of questions that you had to get through, what's your name, what's your policy number, all these questions. I don't remember all of them. But the seventh question was, how old are you? And the product was only good for people who were 25 or older. So he recommended, why don't we just change the order of the questions? After you ask your name, ask someone how old they are. And if they're, under 25, we explain we can't, sell you this product and move on. And so the organization took his feedback and immediately changed the script and how it was written in the computers. And the next day, the call times, the hold times went back to their regular times. So everybody saw that, through this lean process where the frontline workers were able to give their feedback and share their insights and having that flattened reporting line and not having such bureaucracy to make changes. Within one day, there was a huge shift in the wait time of the customers. So that was eye-opening for people. I've had clients, at the end of one day say, okay, we're going to do a lean transformation. We're going to do a digital transformation just from going on a visit. That's how impactful these visits are.
Talk to me about some of the logistics around making one of these kind of visits successful.
So there's two pieces. One is the content, and the other is moving bodies from point A to point B, and it really depends on the size of your group. So in terms of developing the agenda, I would recommend asking your clients what they're most excited about and who the best people to talk to those topics are. They know. And if you know you have a client that's interested in seeing a particular thing and you sort of push for that, that's fine. But I would recommend letting your host client really lead the way, because they know their people, they know what's working, what's not working. One thing I would highly recommend, because I've made this mistake, is I would always have people say to me, we want to watch a problem-solving session. And I finally said, okay, let's schedule like watching a problem-solving session. And the problem-solving session happened to be about picnic tables for a 4th of July event. And it was the most boring thing that people have ever had to sit through. It was horrible. It was so embarrassing. Like, everybody was on their phones. It was a mess. And you can't control for that. You can't tell people, okay, we want to watch a problem-solving session, but we want to, for it to be really interesting. So you need to choose an interesting problem for us to watch. So what's more interesting is hearing about the process and, if there's problem-solving boards or any way that, a room, like a war room that people have for problem-solving or something that people can see, to take the people out of the conference room, bring them to the space where the problem-solving occurs, and have a few people that work on problem-solving come and talk about how this has evolved since doing the work with the consultant, and just make sure you don't get too in the weeds with things, because it sounds great in theory, but then when you're like standing there watching, it's totally painful. So make sure your program is interactive, has as few slides as possible, involves people from all levels of the organization, and really focuses not only on the process, but the mindsets and behaviors that were necessary for the transformation to stick. I would recommend organizing a dinner the night before if people have to travel. So if you're bringing a few prospective clients who don't know each other, they could meet. If you're taking one large group from an organization, you could have dinner with them. And you could invite some people from the organization that you're visiting to join you for dinner, because it just creates a sense of camaraderie, and it's a little less formal than when you're, visiting the organization itself. And then as far as logistics go, you could invite people, you could recommend some hotels near the site. But for just a one-day visit, I wouldn't book the hotel, because a lot of times you might book a Marriott and people have Sheraton points or Starwood points or whatever they have, and they're not going to stay at the hotel you book, so you're going to lose money. So just if it's a one-day visit and people are going to choose where they stay, then let them choose, just have some recommendations for them. If it's a multi-day visit, I would almost insist that everybody stays at the same place and you book a block of rooms for them, because if you're getting up early in the morning and taking vans places, you want people to all be in the same place. But you have to book some, conference space if necessary. You want to work with your host client to make sure that not only are they booking the speakers for the agenda that you create with them, but also that you have booked a space on site to be like your home base, sort of a conference room. If there's rooms with windows, that's always better. But a lot of places don't have those, and you just have to sit in, the dingy room in the basement somewhere. But you get out and walk and see the factory, or, see the call center, or visit the mine, or whatever it is you're doing. But just make sure you're not sitting and listening to someone talk to slides, because that's a waste of someone's time. They could do that in their own office.
Any tips on how, structurally, or anything that you did to, when you close the sessions, to invite reflection and get the visitors to share what was most interesting or the key insights for the day, to somehow process it collectively. Anything around that?
Yeah. So if it's a visit with just one group from one company, you can debrief with everyone, and, ask people to share what they learned, to reflect on how they could apply what they learned in their own organization. But I would recommend if you're bringing multiple groups, so like let's say you have one host and you want to take 5 or 6 potential clients to go and see on the same day, because you don't want to ask them to give up, 5 days. You only want to, so we're going to bring multiple people from different companies to your organization today. You might want to ask them to debrief in small groups, to talk to each other and then share with the plenary what their key takeaways were. And then I would also recommend doing some sort of follow-up when they're not on site to, meet with them and talk through more deeply what the key learnings were and in what ways it could apply to their own organization. A lot of times by the end of the day at a go and see, people are, thinking about all the emails they've missed throughout the day, or what plane they have to catch, or weather conditions, and if their flight's delayed, and should they try to get on a different flight. So debriefs can wind up being more rushed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I would recommend debriefing on site, but planning some time, like within the next week, for a deeper conversation.
Marni, turning the focus to you, I'm always interested to hear from guests about, what you've found works for you to make you more effective, more efficient, your productivity. Could you talk to me about anything that you've been doing either for a long time or new habits you've recently adopted that are really working for you?
I'm the queen of the checklist. I'm the person who gets up in the morning and writes a list of everything they have to do that day. I take yesterday's list and anything that I didn't get to, I add to my list. I get great satisfaction of checking things off or crossing things out. I do it, by hand and write it rather than on the computer. It's always worked for me. It continues to work for me. And I think in terms of being effective with clients, I like people. Like, I genuinely like people, and I care about them, and I want people to succeed. And I want people to learn and grow, because that's what's important to me for myself. So I enjoy what I do, and I listen. And I think by really listening to people and asking good questions, I'm able to discover where they're struggling and what they want on a deeper level, and hopefully either provide it for them, or if I can't, I have an extensive network, so think through who it is I know that can help them with whatever it is they're working on.
Could you share the titles of any books that you have frequently gifted or that just have meant a lot to you?
Oh, gosh. So I wrote a novel called Royal Entertainment. So I've given my novel to a lot of people. It was published about 3 or 4 years ago. Shameless plug for my own book.
Absolutely.
And and that book was based on my life when I was transitioning out of working as a social worker and working for one of the most famed party planners in New York City, who did all the parties at Studio 54 and then had his own company. And I kind of fell into doing this, and it was a bit crazy and fun and interesting. He was a real character. So I wrote a novel about that.
So you were involved in, before you did Go and Sees, you were planning like high-end parties?
Oh, yeah.
Like, can you
Yeah.
can you share? Probably confidential, but can you share any kind of examples, sanitized if necessary, of the kind of shindig that you were involved in creating?
So I'm not going to name names, but people that, quote, pay attention to this sort of stuff will remember all the stories in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal about a particular hedge fund executive who had a 60th birthday party at the Park Avenue Armory. And I produced that party. And we had Rod Stewart playing, Patti LaBelle sang happy birthday, Martin Short was the MC, and it was the first event hosted by the Park Avenue Armory since Brooke Astor's 100th birthday. So it was pretty big. So that was the biggest event I did, and it was many, many, many millions of dollars. The New York Times underwrote it by about 4 million. Because they estimated it, and they estimated it wrong. So that was a big party, and I've also done a lot of fundraisers for nonprofits, which are dear to my heart, like Worth Our Weight in California, which is an organization that basically the executive director is a wonderful, well-known chef in Sonoma County, and she started a program teaching kids who are transitioning out of foster care, juvenile detention, drug rehab, poverty, and other difficult situations how to cook. And her program is a restaurant. The school is a restaurant. They're open for brunch Saturdays and Sundays. Every third Thursday, a well-known chef in Sonoma County comes and cooks with the kids, and they have these fundraising dinners every third Thursdays, and the local wineries donate wine. And she's had over 500 kids go through her program. The program is free and supported by people who go to the restaurant and buy the food. They also do catering. And she has had over 500 kids go through the program, and all of them have jobs. One of them is cooking at a Danny Meyer restaurant in New York right now. So I'm very proud of him. And it's a wonderful program. I have done fundraisers for Face to Face, which their big push right now is Malawi is facing the biggest drought in their history, and sadly it's underreported. And Face to Face is teaching people in Malawi permaculture so they can build gardens in their own home. So people will have a garden that can feed a family of 5 indefinitely. And these gardens are saving lives every day. And they cost about $2 each to build, and the $2 is to pay the local people that are trained to train people on how to build their own gardens. So I've done fundraisers over the years for Face to Face. I've worked on the Pines Party, which raises money for the Pines environmental issues in terms of preserving the ocean, and also for the Gay Men's Health Clinic. So I work on that. That's a party on the beach for 4,000 people. Oh. So that's busy. So I've done a lot. One of the things I'm really excited about right now is the work I'm doing, which is Go and Seize with an organization called Tekaranga, which was started by Dr. Anushri Anandaraja. She is a physician. She's a pediatrician, and she started a pediatric clinic in Sri Lanka after the tsunami. And then, she started clinics after that in Haiti, after the earthquake, in Mozambique, in India, Uganda. And she started an organization called Tekaranga because through her work in international medical relief, she started meeting all these really good NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And she basically thought about how she would see best practices in some, and best practices take into account environmental issues as well as cultural issues. So they set people up for success and independence rather than becoming dependent on the NGO. they become independent, able to bring themselves out of poverty with the support of the NGO. And they don't have negative impact on their environment or, side effects, and that people often don't think about the cultures when they go in to do this sort of work. So she started bringing corporate social responsibility people, philanthropists, people with family foundations to go and see organizations that have best practices. And I've helped her with that. And also introduced her to Ken Wong, the executive director of Face to Face. So she's brought groups to Malawi. And then she decided to take it to the next level. And she started an organization called Women Together, which I'm happy to be working with. And that organization is providing go-and-sees to people that never get to go anywhere and are never seen, which are Indigenous women. So tomorrow is the first go-and-see where she is going to be in Malawi, and there are 3 different groups in Malawi who have never met. One is the group that has been doing the permaculture and sustainable gardening, and they are going to be meeting women from another area of Malawi. And these women have been cooking nutritional meals for hospitals where people are suffering from HIV and also for new mothers. And these women are specialists in cooking nutritional food. And then there's a third group of women who build stoves. And that might sound like unremarkable, but in a lot of countries where people are very poor, they don't have stoves and they cook over open fires, which is, really damaging to the environment because of the CO2 release, and because in order to cook over an open fire, open air takes more fuel to burn rather than in a closed stove. So it impacts deforestation. And so these women are getting together to learn from each other. And it's pretty fantastic because the women who know how to garden will be learning about how to prepare their meals in a more nutritious way from the women who are the nutrition experts. And everybody will be learning how to build the stoves. Well, they're all going to be learning from each other, but it's very holistic. You got your stove, you got your garden, you got your cook. So all these groups will be able to go back to their own communities and share this knowledge. But it also has to do with changing these women's status in their communities because they would have been traveling, they would have been seen as leaders. And that's very important for women who are often unseen. And then the next go-and-see she's planning is part of the reason the women who are doing the nutritional cooking work wanted to learn more about farming and stoves is because they live near a mountain in Malawi that has been deforested. And they really wanted to learn about farming because they've been trying to reforest this mountain. And Anushree works with a group in Mozambique who these women have reforested a mountain. So her next trip for these women is to take them to go to Mozambique, actually get on a plane and fly, which is unheard of in these communities, and to go and visit the seedling nursery that the women in Mozambique have built and to see the mountain that they have transformed. And then they can go back and bring that to their community, but they'll also bring their own knowledge of the permaculture that they've learned and building stoves and the nutritional cooking that they could share with the women who are doing the seedling nurseries. So it's taking the go-and-see to the next level to impact the fight against global poverty and educating women.
That is amazing.
It is amazing, and I'm so excited about it. On my website, professionaldogooders.com, there's a link to Women Together, and you can watch a video about the work we're doing in Malawi.
That's fantastic. So we'll include a link to your novel and as well as to your website.
Oh, great. Thank you.
In the show notes. And this was what an amazing discussion. Marni, thanks so much for giving some thoughts and experience on how to do a Go and See, and also for sharing some of the stories about the amazing work that you've been doing with these nonprofits. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I appreciate being here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. Unleashed is sponsored by Umbrex, the world's first global community of top-tier independent management consultants. The mission of Umbrex is to create opportunities for independent management consultants to meet, share lessons learned, and collaborate. I'd love to get your feedback and hear any questions that you'd like to see us answer on this show. You can email me at unleashed@umbrex.com. That's UMBREX.com. If you found anything on the show helpful, it would be a real gift if you would let a friend know about the show and take a minute to leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. And if you subscribe, our show will get delivered to your device every Monday. Our audio engineer is Dave Nelson. Our theme song was composed by Gary Negbauer, and I'm your host, Will Bachman. Thanks for listening.